Hey everybody, welcome to the NVIDIA Omniverse live stream. This is a special day for us due to the holiday tomorrow. Very happy to have you join us. As always, we have our live chat operational, so feel free to ask your questions and comments along the way. This is going to be a really fun live stream. We have a very special guest from SAP here. We're going to introduce him and the topic in just a minute, but we're going to dive into their work in leveraging AI and OpenUSD. Really exciting stuff. It's going to be action-packed at full time. So we'll get started with a couple quick announcements. First, big news: Omniverse Kit 106 beta is in full swing. The release of Kit 106 is imminent, very close. The latest release brings greater ease and control over your development workflows. It's packed with new tooling and enhanced functionality to accelerate the development of OpenUSD-based apps, and they're ready for cloud or on-prem deployment. So we encourage everybody to check out the Omniverse Kit 106 beta and stay tuned for the official release. We have actually some great trainings that are now available now, both free and paid. I highly encourage people to go ahead and take full advantage of that. We'll put the link in the chat so you know exactly where to go. Robotic factories taking the world by storm. This blog we'll post a link for in just a second in the chat. Explains how NVIDIA has enabled major Taiwanese electronics manufacturers to transform factories using AI-powered digital twins, leveraging Omniverse, Metropolis, and Isaac platforms, allowing simulating layouts, robotic operations, and vision AI models virtually before deployment, optimizing efficiency and automating processes like inspection, which we're going to go over actually on the June 26th live stream, something very similar with Nandu. We're going to go over industrial inspection work that he's doing. Check out that link, read it, and feel free to chat with the community about it in the on the Discord server. NVIDIA also announced that leading robotics companies, including BYD Electronics, Siemens, Teradyne Robotics, and Intrinsic, are adopting the Isaac robotics platform to develop AI-powered autonomous machines. The platform integrates accelerated libraries, simulation technologies, and AI models to enhance efficiency and safety in factories, warehouses, and distribution centers. This also involves Isaac Ross, so definitely check out that blog that's now in the chat. We'll post these links also in the description of the video afterwards. Foxconn has created a digital twin of a new factory in Mexico using NVIDIA Omniverse, super exciting, and AI technologies. Engineers there are defining processes and training robots virtually before the physical factory is built. Obviously, it saves a lot of time and reduces risk. It allows optimizing layouts, increasing automation, and achieving over 30% annual energy savings. A lot more details in that blog. I highly encourage everyone to check that out as well. This SoftServe blog is also a fascinating read. We had this team on the live stream recently, so we'll post a link to that one. They're very complementary to each other. And we have an exciting, we talked about this last week, Learn OpenUSD, kind of a curriculum or a journey, we're calling it. So we originally started out having a DLI course on OpenUSD. Now this is kind of the next phase of that. So if you're new to OpenUSD or you're a veteran, I highly encourage you to sign up to get notified as soon as this journey becomes available. I think it's going to be a really wonderful kind of learning experience for everybody. So dive into that. And then last but not least, we have Isaac. The NVIDIA Isaac Sim 4.0 is out. It's a modular framework for robot learning that aims to simplify common workflows and robotics research. So please check out that link that is on the page, but also in the chat. And let us know if you have any questions on the Omniverse Discord server, which is discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse. And we actually do have a channel there specifically for Isaac. Or if you're having a feature request or a bug, go to our official forums. I will post a link for that as well. Okay, so now I'm very well. Let's bring in my colleague Paul here first. Hey, Paul.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you for joining me today.
Doing well.
We have a very special live stream today with a fantastic partner, SAP. And I know some of the people are probably familiar with SAP, but many people probably are not who are watching live streams. We're going to go into all that. But you've been working with them for quite a while, right? With some of the NVIDIA team?
Yeah, it's been a while. And it's a really exciting one to work with, too, because, you know, it's different than we've worked with in the past around like maybe a DCC tool where you're creating content. This is about powering your business intelligence and bringing all of this logistics and project management and decision-making data together, and bringing that in with a simulation is a pretty cool endeavor.
It's very cool. And so without further ado, let's bring in our very special guest from SAP, Mitch Clark. Welcome to the NVIDIA Omniverse live stream. Now you're straight from Washington, D.C. How you doing, Mitch?
All right. Doing well, doing well. Thanks, Edmar and Paul, for having me.
Thanks for
this
coming.
Is great. This is. I was really looking forward to this. A few months ago, I was watching these, and I was like, that would be so cool to be able to be on there.
That's
now,
awesome.
A few months later, here I am.
That's great. That is so. That's awesome. That's very flattering too. But I have really been, as Paul was just saying a second ago, I've been blown away by some of the material you've been showing off to me, and also we've been showing it in the blog and other things online. But I got a sneak peek of what you're going to show today, and I do find it's extremely compelling. I think that many companies will be really inspired by the work you're going to show off today. Before we get started, why don't you give a little bit of background into yourself and your role at SAP?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Mitch Clark, as you can tell. I'm a product manager currently with SAP. I've been with SAP just over 26 years. So I started out doing implementations in the area of production planning way back when we called the main application SAP had at the time called R3, which was the ERP system. So I did a lot of implementations, across a lot of different customers from manufacturing to many others, and then moved into product management for the last several years. So within SAP, product management is part of development. So we work with customers, in my case, with discrete manufacturers to understand their business challenges and really look at what new innovative technologies, emerging technologies, whether it be AI or the Omniverse, can we bring to bear to add to our product or build a new product to add value for our customers. So I've been doing that for the last several years, and then a few months ago got hooked up with NVIDIA, and here we are. So really excited to share what we have, and hopefully everybody will find it as interesting as I do.
Oh, I have no doubt about that at all, actually. So we have a really fantastic video to kick things off and put things in perspective for everybody. So let's watch this for 1 minute, and we'll be right back with Mitch and Paul. This is a great video kind of going over what we'll discuss today.
BMW Group is adopting AI and digital twin technologies to help maximize sustainability and efficiency. Here, they're planning a new robotic work cell in their factory. This cell requires additional compressed air for pneumatic grippers, so the plant manager evaluates installing a larger, more efficient compressor from Kaiser compressors. A Kaiser sales rep describes the requirements using natural language in SAP Intelligent Product Recommendation. AI analyzes these requirements and recommends the most suitable compressors. The plant manager can then inspect each compressor or even drop it into their virtual factory to visualize them in full context, in either a web browser or spatial computing device. With NVIDIA platforms, SAP is reimagining business processes with AI, helping customers make more accurate decisions faster than ever.
Amazing, amazing. So we're going to dive into how SAP is actually revolutionizing the enterprise sales process using these techniques, leveraging AI and OpenUSD. Super exciting. And if there's anything, any terms people hear along the way and you're not sure what we're referring to, don't be shy. Post it in the comments and we'll answer you right away. For example, I learned a new one from working on this live stream of IPR. Intelligent product recommendation, which is really interesting. I think kind of goes to the heart of the software you're working on for enterprise sales. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about kind of what this platform is that you're building for your clients?
Yep. So as I mentioned before, we deal heavily with the discrete manufacturing companies. So these are companies like Kaiser, which you saw in the video, BMW, KUKA. So these companies are making typically complex configurable products that need to be sold, obviously, and serviced and whatnot. But because of the complexity, it can be a challenge just to identify what's the right product and how should it be configured to address a specific need of the customer. So traditionally, our manufacturing customers rely on well-trained salespeople They'll go out, they'll talk to the customer. The customer will describe what they want in their language, they're based on their needs. And then the well-trained sales rep will then make the recommendation of this is the product or multiple products we recommend, and here's how it can be configured. The challenge, and that's the way that the process has been working for many years. But the challenge is, the sales reps in some cases can take up to 8 months of training before they can sell effectively. And in some cases, the experienced colleagues are retiring or moving off, and you lose a lot of that knowledge that's really integral to be able to effectively sell. So with our application intelligent product recommendation, we basically capture the customers, or we allow them to capture the data. They train we train models based on the historical data, the sales data, the quote data. And then at runtime, when the sales rep is working with a customer, you just ask a handful of needs-based questions, and the product will recommend the right product and configuration.
That's really fascinating. So you guys probably saw immediate results from this, and so that must have been very exciting. And I think you're gonna share your screen in a minute, and we can kind of take a deeper look at SAP and the platform. But Paul, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say the complexity of this is outrageous. This is not like walk down to your local Home Depot and pick out the compressor off the shelf, which, by the way, takes me a lot of time to figure out which one I wanted for that. But as I was digging in this with Mitch and just learning about this space, like in that video, there were 5 compressors. Those 5 compressors are each bigger than a car. I mean, they're large, and they have a really important job to do. Like that factory needs to rely on a certain amount of pressure and a certain amount of uptime and a certain minimum amount of electric use, and a piping system going through the entire thing. And they have big questions like, if I put in this new cell, does my current system have enough capacity or not? And if I need more, the decision matrix is huge. I forget, Mitch, how many there were. Thousands and thousands of configurations of these things. They're almost like each one's a bespoke machine. There's so many combinations. And it's because, like, when I buy a compressor for home, I just get one that's bigger than the thing I need to run, right? And then maybe I want to run 2 things, so I'll double what I need or whatever. Here in a factory like that, you can't waste like that. You need to get the right size. And in fact, a lot of the challenge is right sizing these products to fit what you need. And it takes a lot of math and a lot of figuring out, a lot of configuration of these machines. And then the other thing that I would say about the complexity of it is, beyond just picking the thing you need, Mitch was telling me about, now can my forklift drive this product into the warehouse in the right spot? Or do I need to cut a hole in the roof and use a crane and drop it in? Or how am I going to get all this to work in the space that I have, not just in the requirements I have? So using the kinds of tools that Mitch is about to show really makes a lot of sense in these big industrial use cases. And the combination of the business intelligence plus the visual, can I see how it's going to, like the Vision Pro, the Apple Vision Pro component of that was kind of like, can a person walk up and open the door and walk around this to maintain this product, right? So the decision matrix is really, really deep and interesting and complex.
Yep. Yeah, to your point, right? One is, is it the right, fit? Does it meet if we look at a compressor, right? Does it have the right cubic feet of air or the right differential pressure and whatnot? But then there's all the other aspects as something you had touched on. Does it physically fit? Can you get it in there? What does it mean to service it after the fact? What does it cost to install it? Because one thing is, the compressor might cost $10,000 to buy, but now what does it cost to install it? Do you have to move piping? Do you have to move pieces of within the shop floor need to be moved out of the way? And this is obviously just one example, right? We go well beyond compressors, but this is a very concrete example. And I just want to shout out to Kaiser, a great partner of SAP, for supporting us, as well as BMW and KUKA as we built out the POC and the video.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, it's one of the powers of this tech. Also, the ability to collaborate with multiple teams across the world. Really fascinating. Okay, Mitch, I think I see you sharing your screen at the bottom there. Do you want to switch the window? It looks like the screen you're sharing is the streaming panel.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Okay, good. I think I see it. There you go.
Yep.
All right. So let's see what you got here.
Okay, so maybe just step back a minute away from the deep dive into the use case. So the video that was presented was shown at our event called Sapphire. This is SAP's big marketing event. Paul, I believe, was on site along with several other colleagues from NVIDIA. It's typically on the order of upwards of 15,000 attendees, which is customers and partners and SAP employees. And one of the keynote, the CEO keynote, so this is on stage, SAP's CEO Christian Klein and Jensen Huang from NVIDIA phoned in or videoed in from Taiwan. And as part of the keynote address, they made an announcement about the partnership between NVIDIA and SAP, and specifically how we were going to partner in the area of Omniverse. And then as part of that, one of the initial application, pilot, if you will, application showing the integration was the intelligent product recommendation. And then that's where the video was shown as part of this large marketing event. So we've gotten great feedback, and we're really eager to work with Kaiser, obviously, but other customers moving forward to show how we can combine SAP with NVIDIA, Omniverse, and other technologies to really drive value for our customers. With that in mind, some of you might be saying, as Edmar mentioned, who is SAP? And this is actually, I think, in the 26 years I've been with SAP, it's only been a handful of times where I've presented where I couldn't assume that everybody in the room or online knew who SAP was. So for those of you who don't, we used to be called the largest software company that no one's ever heard of. I think that's now changed because we are becoming more and more prevalent. But we're a large enterprise software provider, 100,000 employees. We're based in outside Frankfurt in Germany is a corporate headquarters, a small town called Waldorf. And then the U.S., we have headquarters in Newtown Square outside Philadelphia, offices all over the country, and then big development group over in the Bay Area near Palo Alto. And we serve, as you can see here, many of the largest companies. And it used to be we focused heavily on Fortune 500 companies, but over the years we've enhanced products, had different versions of the products. And now we address a huge number, not just large enterprises, but medium size. That's what the SMEs are here, kind of small and mid-sized companies. And we address 26 different industries. So anything from consumer products, retail, even things like sports and entertainment. The NHL and the San Francisco 49ers, for those of you in the Bay Area, are big SAP customers. And one of the, as I mentioned, the key one I focus on is the discrete manufacturing. So this is automotive, industrial manufacturing, aerospace and defense, and high tech, where NVIDIA falls, and they happen to be one of our customers and obviously a partner. So this is kind of SAP in a nutshell. We're heavily into software that supports the business processes of the enterprise. So it's finance, sales, HR, procurement, manufacturing, if you're manufacturing goods, supply chain, even some PLM, right? So we have applications that address all those different applications or those different processes.
Wow.
From the event, I was really impressed with how much of a platform you are, right? Like there's a huge ecosystem of experience builders out there, building on top of, BTP basically, but on top of your platform to deliver. Because it seems like every business has a very bespoke need what they're trying to get across, and there's a lot of companies out there building enterprise class solutions on top of what you got.
Yep, absolutely. Great point. And so we have, as here mentioned, 20 some odd thousand partners. Some of those are implementation partners that help us, because depending on the complexity, the implementations are not necessarily trivial. So we have partners that help with the implementation. Sometimes it's process re-engineering, and then there's kind of the technical implementation, the configuration of the application. Then we have a whole another set of partners that build, as Paul mentioned, on top of our applications. So it could be enhancing or developing extensions of the core ERP product, which is kind of the lighthouse product down here, sometimes now referred to as S/4HANA. In the past, you may have heard the terms like R3 or ECC. So it could be enhancing the application, or it could be building whole new applications, either on top or especially now with our business technology platform. So it can be partners, or the application that we built and we're going to talk about is actually an SAP built application that runs on top of the business technology platform, which is our kind of a Azure type of development platform, in the cloud. These are often required because we address such a broad set of customers and industries. One core product can't address everything, right? The differences, requirements from a company that does, let's say, the NHL, obviously, other than maybe some of the core finance pieces, is drastically different than the processes that a company like Kaiser would address, right? So in those cases, sometimes we need to build customized applications that address a specific niche or a specific set of industries, and that's kind of what we did with the Intelligent Product Recommendation.
Amazing. I mean, I can tell, like you said earlier, over 100,000 people at SAP, right?
Yep.
Really large platform companies. Pretty amazing.
Yep. And spread all over the world, right? So just within our relatively small application, I engage with developers in India, in Waldorf in Germany, and Romania. Right? So it's very much of a global type of development and deployment and go to market and all the activities that go around the release of a product.
Very cool. And if you're watching, you're just tuning in, we're sitting with SAP, diving into how they're revolutionizing the enterprise sales process, leveraging OpenUSD and Gen AI. We've been discussing kind of the experience and the kind of focus of SAP, of leveraging their large team over many different industries and clients, including the NFL. So if it's a name you haven't heard of before, you'll probably recognize the logo a lot now moving forward, because you do see it around in different places. Now kind of know a little bit more about the machine there. Feel free to post your questions along the way in the comments section. Any questions you have, we're going to dive into the platform in just a second. But this is really, really fascinating. So thank you, Mitch, for bringing these slides to us.
Happy to do so.
Yeah, it'd be great to show it a little bit.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Let me do that. So just to kind of tee this thing up.
Yeah.
Right, so why did we want to kind of enhance the application with Omniverse and build out the integration? So I guess before that, why even build the application, right? And I kind of touched on this a little bit before, but just to hopefully bring it home a little bit better, maybe for those that aren't familiar with the compressors, I tried to come up with an example that might be a little more relevant. So this screenshot here is a shot from one of the warehouses, one of the NVIDIA assets, right?
So I recognize that. Yep.
Yeah. Many of you might recognize this. So imagine you're the warehouse manager. This is your warehouse, and now you need a new forklift to move the pallets around, right? So as I mentioned before, right, historically you have a couple options, right? One, you could go to the e-commerce site of the fork truck manufacturers, and sometimes what you find is the products are represented in a very feature and technical representation, right? Just because the nature of some of the companies, they tend to be engineering focused, so the offerings tend to be represented that way. So you might go there, and sometimes they have a lot of different offerings, and maybe there's a couple different ones that can address your needs. And you might say, well, I want to make sure I get the right one. So you call up the sales rep, right? You're afraid to pick and just maybe make a selection online, right? And then, as I mentioned before, now you rely on a sales rep, and basically they will then ask you a bunch of questions, right, about your warehouse. They'll say probably, how wide are these racks? How high are the racks? What's the floor like, right? Is everything going to be inside? How heavy are these pallets? How big are the pallets, right? And then the sales rep will then recommend what they, based on their domain experience, what you ought to buy, right? What compress or what forklift, and how it should be configured. So this is where we're really, as I mentioned before, we're using the AI to look at the historical data, historical sales and quote data, and then now once we train the models, the recommendations can now be made instantaneously. You ask a handful of questions about the warehouse, really the needs or the job to be done, and then the machine learning and the AI will then recommend the right compressor or the right forklift and the right configuration. Right? That best suited to address the needs. And then provide additional information, right? Like pricing and lead time. In the future, you might have things like CO2 footprint and things like that really help with the buying decision. So this is really what we address with the IPR.
Yeah, that's great. We have a kind of a timely question here from Nandu in the chat, asking if about the study on the return on investment on using this. Have you guys? We talked a little bit about this in the warm up, but you've already seen a pretty nice benefit already from your clients, right?
Yep. So we're the numbers that we've quantified are expected benefits, right? So that the key value drivers that we really go after with the application are shortening the time to create a quote, because we have customers, depending on the complexity of their products, it can take days, if not weeks, to generate a quote. So if that time can be reduced from, let's say, days or weeks, which probably translates into many hours of effort, if that can be reduced to just a handful of hours or a handful of minutes, right? That's one of the key value propositions. Another would be if you can shorten that time or now generate recommendations in real time. Now you can do simulations and what ifs, right? So maybe you go through a configuration, and it says this is the product and this is the price. You say, wow, I don't have that much budget. What if I adjust this, right? If I relax that requirement, right? So now you can quickly iterate and then possibly get to the right solution faster. Another one is around the training, right? Because as I mentioned, it can take for some manufacturers 8 months of training for the sales rep before they're very effective. So if you can reduce that time by 20, 40, 50%, right? You can have, not only are you saving time, but now that's an additional, let's say 4 months of that sales rep now generating new revenue, right? So that can be quantified. And then finally, we can now earlier in a sales cycle, right? Because some of these sales cycles can go on for months, right? And if earlier in the sales cycle, you can more accurately predict just based on a handful of needs, what product and configuration the customer is likely to select, right? Now your sales forecast accuracy goes up, and you can also share that information with the supply chain team, right? And now you can give them an earlier indicator of, yep, we think this deal is going to close. This is the configuration they're likely to select. Now we want to make sure you have the right components in stock to do. This is typically an assembled order type of scenario, but so you can assemble that product, thus shortening the customer lead times. So,
and that benefit is also compounded, right? Multiple times. So you get all that benefit for the compressor, but then you get that benefit for the U-line shelving that you might put in. Then you get that benefit for the cooker robots that you might be configuring. And so in previous live streams, we've talked about this factory planning experience where you have somebody walking through the factory, they're reconfiguring a line, figuring out how it's all going to go. There may be even other previous ones scanning the as-built and bringing in what the building actually looks like right now. And so you can imagine the combinatorial effect of I'm planning a line. I have a what if scenario of like, I want to drop in this new cell. That new cell itself is very complex. It includes multiple robots, multiple things that all need to be configured through something like IPR. And then that in turn has a secondary effect of like, oh, now I need more air. Okay, where is that more air going to go? And I can see all of that, all of those things get composed back into this larger scene. And then data from the system. So like, IPR recommends one of these 3 compressors. Imagine 3 variants of those compressors with metadata about the explicit thing into the schema. So now you can drop that into the other scene and people go, okay, look, we've chosen. We've made a decision together about the entirety of the line. This is the one we're going to choose. What was it? Okay, great. Call this salesperson. This is the model number we need to get, and we need to get going through this thing. And here's the URL back to the quote, right? And they can put it back in. So you can do all those kinds of things, all composed. So every bit of ROI that Mitch was just talking about gets replayed multiple times through this, and then it all gets composed into a larger decision matrix. So it's pretty neat how it's all starting to stack together.
Yep. And just to add to that, right, because many of our products, or the products that we're talking about here from the manufacturers, they might be configured to order. Like you think of a car as reasonably configured to order, but oftentimes they have a component of engineer to order as well, right? So as part of the sales cycle, now you're designing part of maybe not the entire compressor or the entire robot, but maybe you need some specials on top, or maybe you're designing a system. So once you get into that, now oftentimes you're collaborating with other entities, whether it be a systems integrator that's helping with the engineering, maybe it's a pump skid that's got valves and pumps and sensors, right? So all these colleagues need to come together. And now in real time, they can be collaborating. And if something changes, you immediately see what that change is, and you can adjust your design if required. Versus in the past, you might have to do redlinings of drawings and emails going back and forth. We changed the viscosity of the liquid. Now 5 different components within that might now need to change, right? You get instant visibility. Any changes can be instantly reflected in the scene. So
then on that note, Brian from our team just put this nice comment. For the sales experience, think about buying a car or a house. Who would you rather buy from? A vendor shows only text, maybe a few 2D images, or a vendor has a 3D experience you can sit in or walk through in the case of a house. I mean, obviously, it's you don't have to be too smart to know which is a better, more pleasurable experience there. But just, all that stuff from start to finish, it just seems like it's a win-win.
Mitch, do you mind bringing up your user experience? I think it'd be good to talk through the pieces of that. It's just it's a neat, different use case, and I'd like people to see the nuances.
While Mitch is bringing that up, feel free to post any kind of comments or questions or observations. Feel free to use the live chat, and we will while we're waiting for that. Ashley is very impressed by this panel already. Thank you, Ashley. Okay, cool. I think we've got your visuals here.
Yep. So if you don't mind, I'll just this is a demo showing the entire application. So I'll just kind of run through it, and then we'll stop, and I think we can discuss the highlights of hopefully this thing. So this would be back to the Kaiser compressor scenario. So just teeing this up, imagine you're the sales rep from Kaiser. Now you're working with, let's say, a plant manager from BMW in the video example. So typically you're in a CRM type of application, which is what's shown here. So within that, you'd have different opportunities. And then in this case, we have one opportunity for BMW. And then within that, we have our intelligent product recommendation application embedded within the CRM application. So this would be now you're in the application. Now you're looking for a recommendation of the right compressor. So now you would describe your needs, as I mentioned before. So what we can do now is, oops, sorry for the bouncing. Right. So now you can describe your needs in natural language. In the past, you'd have a lot of drop downs, right? You kind of select different things from the drop downs. With our current release, you can now enter your needs in natural language. This could be that they came in via email. You might have a specification document, right? And the generative AI can now analyze that unstructured text. And in this particular case, it's giving you hints as to what values should be assigned to the different values. Moving forward, we envision potentially defaulting the values in, but right now it kind of gives you hints based on here was the text, and here's what we recommend you assigning to that value. Now moving forward, once the needs have been set, right, now we initiate another set of AI capabilities, which now recommend the products. Right? So based on these needs, we've recommended 3 different products. These are what we call KMATs. So these are configurable products for the different configurable compressors. And then and what we see down here is the Omniverse Kit app that's now streamed into this intelligent product recommendation application. Right? So we can go in a little deeper as to how this works, but basically we have a web application and we're streaming the Omniverse scene into that web application. Now, as the user then selects the 3 different options that are recommended, then the scene automatically gets updated. Right? So they selected this model of compressor, and then this compressor within this broader compressor station gets adjusted with that selection. Right? And the same would happen as you pick the different recommended compressors. Right? And now you can obviously, everybody's familiar with Omniverse. Right? You can navigate around, kind of get a sense of, is that going to fit? Right. So now let's try this other one. This one is going to be a bigger compressor, right? Because now you can have a bigger compressor that runs, slower, but you can still generate the right amount of air, right? So now we drop that compressor in. We can back up. Now we can move in a little bit. We'll see in a second. Right now we can start to see how close those 2 compressors are together, right? Moving forward, we envision having the ability to open and close the doors, do things like that, simulations, and you see that maybe that service technician is probably going to come in a couple of years later. Maybe they can't even fit through there, or maybe the door can't even open, right? So now you can really get some spatial awareness as to what's going on with that compressor within the overall facility.
So we pause there for a second. That's a different way of seeing Omniverse for a lot of people. I think that we're in a web page, which I guess we've seen with car configurators and stuff like that, but there it is. There, it's got your own UI around the edge. It's in fact UI embedded in UI because you've got IPR embedded in the CRM app inside of this thing, right? And then within that, a viewport, and that viewport has its own UI. It has scene manipulators and things like that. And I like how you've sort of removed the selection UI and you keep that in the web page and then controlling the scene. So when things happen in the web page, it's also happening in the scene. There's a communication bus going back and forth through it. This to me is a great example of treating Omniverse as a platform, of taking the Omniverse componentry, the rendering APIs, the app streaming APIs, the USD handling APIs and stuff like that, and using them in a very bespoke use case like this, but then still keeping all of that USD compatibility. So if you want to take this compressor out and then down the line put it into that factory plan from somebody else, or whatever else the various customers might end up using the data, it's fine. You could just have export the USD. You could export these as variants and they could pull them in. You could integrate with another use case down the line because, as you said, SAP has all sorts of logistics data, all sorts of PLM data, all sorts of other things. So you can imagine either part of your third-party ecosystem or other parts of SAP building out similar things where it could just keep on working down the line and have, now that it's no longer the Kaiser compressor salesperson, now it's somebody operating the PLM system or the supply chain system, and it just keeps this data flow working across of it. So and at no time did anybody have to download anything, or it doesn't matter what machine they're running on or any of that kind of stuff. They can just use this straight up. It's pretty neat.
Yep. Yeah, and just to add to that, right? If you imagine where we are in the sales process, we're up front in a quotation stage, right? So this is early on. You'll see later you can generate the quote. Now imagine moving forward. Once you buy the compressor, now you could simulate how it comes in. You could simulate the installation. Now, once it's been installed, potentially you hand over the USD to the operator, and then now they can, maybe have IoT data coming in, showing, real information about the operations of it. Now, let's say maybe a couple of years down the line, you need some spare parts. Now you can open it up potentially and see, what's the as-built, what the as-maintained bill of material, as you maybe need to repair some of the spare parts or replace, spare parts. So now it becomes kind of a platform for, where all the different data comes together, for ease of access by the various parties.
Yeah, it's great. Hopefully this will inspire some folks out in the community to think through these kinds of embedded use cases.
Yeah, that's such a clean interface. Great.
And one other piece we're not showing here, but in addition to the Kit app that we built with the support of the NVIDIA colleagues, we built an extension. And again, we're not showing it here, but within this Kit app, we have an extension whereby when you click on, let's say, the compressor, we call our backend ERP system. So let's say our S/4HANA, and this is where you have a ton of business-oriented data, right? So we used a relatively simple example of pulling back the weight, and we have a little widget where you can then see the weight for whatever you click on. But it could be anything, right? It could be inventory levels, it could be pricing information, costing information, lead times. Is it a procure part or a buy or make part? It could be we integrate with other applications about service history, right? So the sky's the limit on once you have the ability to integrate, based on this visualization scheme, there's huge potential there. We're just kind of scratching the surface.
I know how excited Kaiser was about this too. How did that go? Like, you approached them and talked about it. Like, what was enticing to them to think about doing this together?
Yes, I don't want to put too many words in their mouth. Maybe in the future you could have some of their colleagues on, but they said in the past what they've typically used, and what anybody on the call can actually try this out. They're doing AR right now, where we can have a 3D visualization of the compressor, and then if you have, let's say, an iPad and you hold it up to the plant, you can overlay the compressor over the top, right? So you can kind of see where it would be in the plant, but to the ability to actually embed it within it in, let's say, in the metaverse or the digital twin, they said, that's next level. They use the term game changer, and they said, we from the IT department, they want to make their sales reps, they want to be rock stars, right? We want to make them rock stars, right? And I think they view this as one step in that direction.
That's great. We have a couple of comments in the chat. Let me bring this up. If you're just joining us, we're chatting with SAP and how they're revolutionizing enterprise sales process with generative AI and OpenUSD. Here's the first one. This is from Nandu. Can the IPR recommendation be fed back into the engineering plant maintenance teams where they can do simulations of cooling or heating using SimScale?
So we don't have that right now, but we certainly, moving forward, would like to explore those types of things, right? Because again, this gets into, it's not just a visualization. It's, how can we now leverage some of the simulations, right? And now, because you have the physics capabilities, fluid processing is one of the I think the physics capabilities that are available. So we will look to explore that. Certainly some of that is very domain specific. So there's, the pump manufacturers are, they're experts in that area, right? We're not necessarily experts in fluid dynamics, although we have some expertise there. But it could be, do we then have a platform where we allow the pump manufacturers to do those types of simulations, and we give them certain things that are relevant. The other piece is, because the products are configurable, the configuration, the rules that are typically behind the scenes, many of those are based upon physics, right, and the engineering. So it could be, can we offer something where customers can do simulations to identify what the rules and the constraints could be in the configurator? So lots of different options. We're still early on exploring what some of those might be.
Very cool.
What's cool about that is that Mitch and the SAP team and all those folks can focus on the broad, the parts that are really driven off of the business intelligence or all the different SAP central theses. And then wherever they choose to, they can partner with other people in the USD ecosystem, and other people in the USD ecosystem are doing like fluid dynamics and things like that. And so you can imagine saying, okay, now that I've gotten all this, let's hand all this over into this tool. It does its thing, and then it comes back, and now I go. That in almost every scenario I've seen with these big, heavy industrial workloads, there's like 17 apps involved, right? And there might be 4 apps from one vendor, 2 apps from another, a bunch of individual ones, some very bespoke ones. And a lot of what these big, heavy industry customers are trying to do is not spend so much time moving from one to the other to the other. And so like getting to USD enables them to build the connective tissue across them so they can do this high level analysis like you're describing. And so, if there's a company that wants to do the the thermodynamics of a data center or of a compressor bay or whatever together. Well, you can just plug those things together now and then just take the inputs and outputs out, right? And then pass the data back into SAP, and it can now use that for the next round of decision making. So a lot of good connectivity is enabled once everything starts speaking USD.
Yeah, it seems incredibly scalable. Speaking of which, we have a hardware question regarding the GPU. I'm sure, if Mitch, you know this, but do you need a dedicated GPU for each instance of the configuration that's running?
I can give a general answer first.
Yeah, I'll Paul handle that. This is
yeah.
Key discussion topic, so good.
Yeah, there's a couple things. One is there's an approach with our app streaming API, and if you're doing app streaming, we talk about how that works. And there's also this approach through GDN, the Graphics Delivery Network. And so you can take a kit-based app, and you can host that kit-based app up on GDN, and GDN will handle the load balancing around the world and making sure that you've got the right number of instances up and running and all that good stuff. And so I think it's a question of like, what's your use case, what's happening, and so forth. By default, we take that kit app, throw it up there, and give each person an instance of the experience running. But that's just a resource allocation question. Depends upon what kind of use case you're looking for, Sanzo, and we can figure out where it best makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. And feel free to follow up with that question if you'd like. We have a live stream channel on the Discord server. We could chat about this topic or any other for live stream. But fantastic. We have hundreds of people watching right now, and I know this is hours flying by. So if you want to squeeze in any questions or comments, please use this time to post them in these last 10 minutes of the show so we can address them. But yeah, so now we went over the why, and the challenges that you guys were looking to overcome building this platform. And now we're looking at the how you've been doing it. Is there any more to the how part before we move into like the future?
Yeah, we put together just a high-level architecture. I can share that.
Oh, that would be great. Yes.
Okay. Let me go back to my. Let me change the. All right. Share screen.
Edmar, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm looking for when StreamYard shows it, I can bring it up as an option. I think it's probably still coming. What do you see on your side, Mitch?
I think I might have, did I hit the right button? Oh, okay, sorry.
Let me remove the video. Oh, here it is. I see it. I got it. Okay, there you go.
Yep. Can you see it okay?
Yeah, it looks perfect.
Okay, so this is a little bit crude, but hopefully it kind of gets the point across. So on the left-hand side, we have the Intelligent Product Recommendation application. So as we mentioned before, this is a BTP application. So it runs in the public cloud, basically. So within the application, we have what we call design time. This is where we build the models. So if let's say if it's a compressor, there's certain needs attributes that you saw during the dropdown. There's the attributes that are being recommended and predicted, right? All that setup happens in this design time piece. Then we do, because we're using machine learning, we train the models and deploy the models, and then they get published. So all this happens within design time, within Intelligent Product Recommendation. And then we have the runtime UI, which you saw, right, that had the drop downs and the visualization. So there we basically, we stream the runtime, which you saw out here on the outside frame. And then for that, I kind of skipped over, but we pull in the sales and configuration data in this case, from our S/4HANA ERP to then help train the models. So this tells you, we had umpteen thousand quotes. They were configured this way. That's what's used to train the machine learning, the AI models for the predictions. So then so after the model's trained and published, right, then we do the runtime piece. This would now be, your sales rep, you're sitting with the customer, right? You see your screen on the outside here. And then on the NVIDIA side, we imported the various files from CAD. So we got some of them from our partner Kaiser. Others were provided from BMW and KUKA, and they were basically brought all together in Nucleus Server. where we had the factory, the compressor, et cetera. And then, as I mentioned, we built the Kit app, which handles the streaming, which is the viewport you saw down here, as well as taking the clicks from the web application back into the scene to make the adjustments. Right. So in our case, we took a relatively straightforward, where when you selected each of these, we would render or not render that particular variant within the scene. So this is kind of how the pieces fit together, specifically for the proof of concept. We used, in this case, we had a couple virtual machines that we did various testing on, and then some of the early prototyping we did on a workstation, a laptop workstation with the RTX GPUs.
So if y'all want to build something like this and just mess around with it, like embedding Omniverse into a web page, there's a tutorial and sample that Ashley put together that you all should try out. You can do it all localhost on your machine and get it working. And then once you get it working localhost, you can imagine posting up to a server and doing it, and then posting out to GDN and so forth. But the heart of it is building that kit-based app that has the minimal UI that you want. Like you may not have the Stage Explorer or any of the file stuff. You might not have the menus. You might have just a viewport with maybe there's not scene manipulators, or where you can't move the objects around, or maybe there are scene manipulators. We can grab the door and you can open it, or maybe you instead have buttons that would run some action graph that would do a little animation or whatever. So yeah, I think there's a very straightforward way for you all to get out there and try imagining building experiences like this into a web page, into a very basic React web page.
This is so helpful. This is so great. Thank you so much for putting this together, Mitch, and being so open with the blueprint here. We've got a great question for you. Put it on the screen here. SAP's future strategy for reconciling, synchronizing data that is represented within the USD-based digital twin.
Yep. So reconcile and synchronize. Yeah. So obviously, once we move towards a real productive environment, right, the complexity goes up dramatically, right? Because it's one thing to do this with one compressor or 2 or 3 compressors. In reality, Kaiser or Cuckoo, whoever it happens to be, they have hundreds, if not thousands, of products that can be configured, many different ways. So a lot of it is, and this is one of the things we're working on now, is to how do we manage the data? Is it coming from CAD? Then also, how to control the access, right? Because now if you're dealing with CAD data, this is manufacturer's intellectual property. So they hold this very dear. They're not just going to open it up to. So access control to different parties is a critical piece. So we're working with, we have some internal applications that we think can help with some of that. And we're going to continue to work with the customers to understand, what are the expectations. Then we get into data privacy and some of those things we're going to have to deal with. So the bottom line is we're still, working through exactly how it will happen. The goal is we'll have it, work through in the coming months.
There's also some OpenUSD, AOUSD kinds of conversations to be had in the future around. For some of this stuff, not for all of it, but for some of this stuff, is there a need for a schema in USD? And if so, I could imagine that SAP would be a part of helping to drive that schema and that standardization. Or maybe there's not really a need for a schema because it does a bunch of analysis on some data. And so then maybe it's a file format plugin where you've got the SAP data store and its algorithms running on that data store, and then a file format plugin that lets you pass through to it. So because you can use a sort of opaque data source exposed through USD, or maybe you just go super simple and write it right into the metadata inside of USD, and then you have some sort of synchronization logic. There's a variety of options you could imagine going down here, depending upon if the data is PLM data, or if it's parts data, or if it's the analysis of those two things together, or maybe it's as-built data. All of those should be in a SAP warehouse of data, right? The question is, how do you best expose that into the description of the world, into the USD? And it'll be a variety of tactics, I'm sure. Already you're doing the ones where it's I have a extension running. And so when you click on a part, it can go do a lookup into your data store to figure out the weight or whatever metadata. So there's minimally a connection there. And so it's all just a question of like, what is the right thing to do at the moment via Spectrum. The good news is you have the flexibility to do any of those choices. And so now it's just a matter of what's the right thing to do for your customers and the ecosystem and all that.
Yeah, and just to build on that, right, as we have multiple parties coming in on the same scene, you might say, well, that person could, or that company or person can see the outline of the pump, but you don't want them to look inside and see the bearings and the seals, right? But then a different individual, if it's a service technician for the pump manufacturer, they should have the ability to go in and see everything, right? So now how do you control the visibility and the access?
Right?
Yep,
they can see the bearings and the serial numbers of it to figure out and do a lookup
exactly.
of like when it was purchased and its maintenance life cycle, maybe, right? Like, yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. We actually put a couple of links in the chat that Mitch shared with us earlier. So be sure to check that out. Let me see if I can share my screen. I can show these really quick. Let me see.
Maybe on the way out, we can show the video again just to let the folks
know. Oh, yeah, it's a good idea. Let me make sure I got the right video here. I think this is it. Okay, so there's Mitch Clark, his LinkedIn page. If anyone's interested to connect with Mitch, we post this link in the chat.
Edgar, wait, stop. You're not following Mitch. Click the little follow button right there.
Oh, sorry. Jeez.
Look at
there I am.
Yeah. I knew you were. I didn't see it right for a second. Smash that follow button.
I will. Now we're going to be lifelong friends now, Mitch. I hope you don't mind. Okay, cool. So yeah, so this posted, we put the link in the chat. We'll add the description afterwards. But this is includes some great links from Mitch here. We've also got the web link from SAP site on the IPR, or Intelligent Product Recommendation. A nice video there. I recommend everyone to check that out. And we also got a blog, I think, from NVIDIA up here, which is what Mitch showed in the beginning of the presentation. So from the Sapphire in Orlando. So feel free to check out all those links and information. And also, I saved this here as well because there's something really cool and fun happening pretty soon. On June 26th, actually, there's an NVIDIA webinar about accelerating your career in AI. So this is not just for students, actually. This is for anyone, no matter where you're at in life. If you want to learn more about AI, this is a fantastic 1 hour panel discussion that you can actually post questions to and connect with the people afterwards. Also, we'll post the link in the I'll do it right now. Post the link in the chat so that everybody can register. It's free, but it does require pre-registration. I highly encourage everyone to take full advantage of that opportunity. Okay, do we leave anything out in this action-packed hour? I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Did we cover enough about the future and what's next? I feel like we did, but is there anything we might have left out? Do you want to leave any closing remarks?
There's so many things. Yeah, I think the potential is really high. Like it was really great to see the value of this specific use case and to hear it straight from the folks at Kaiser Compressor and see it in action with them. But then to imagine the knock on, like all the other customers that come onto this thing, and then talking with Mitch behind the scenes, like some exciting set of opportunities. SAP data and the information and knowledge that SAP has is phenomenal. If you're a big company, well, actually, frankly, any company now, 80% of your revenues or your customers are smaller, right? It's a great time to get in and start thinking about how to meld that data together with how you're visualizing and simulating the world. So it's very cool. And if you're somebody like Kaiser, if you're in the discrete manufacturing space and you have products you need to get out and get rolling and you need to get recommended to customers, I think you should give Mitch a talk and see if it makes sense to pull that line of products in.
Great. One thing from my side, just if you don't mind, I just want a big thank you to the NVIDIA team. It was a great, I'm assuming it's going to continue, but a great partnership. The expertise was unbelievable to jump on to solve some of the technical problems, the functional things we ran into. Some was just coming up the learning curve. And it was a great partner to work with. And again, if any of the colleagues from Kaiser or BMW or KUKA are online, thanks so much for being involved in as well.
Look at that great comment there from Tyrone. Thanks, Mitch and NVIDIA team. This makes ERP systems so much more exciting to work with. That's a pretty good statement there. So that's awesome. Thank you for that, Tarun. I just posted a link for our next live stream, which will be on June 26th, featuring Nandu, who was in the chat a little earlier. Nandu is a fascinating gentleman. He also is the manager or leader of our OpenUSD study group. Actually, it's not ours; it's the community's. The community has managed a weekly study group led by Nandu for the past year or so. So if you want to learn about that study group and also the work that Nandu is doing with his company, who's an Inception member, that's NVIDIA Startup Program, they specialize in industrial inspection. So being able to look at assets and look to see if there's any defects. So that'd be another fascinating live stream next week. But it'll be hard to top this one. So thank you, Mitch. I really appreciate. We're so honored to not only have SAP join us, but have someone who's been at SAP for over 20 years, being able to share their great knowledge and experience and tips and the great slides and the blueprint, really giving everybody a great overview and understanding of how you guys are taking advantage of the technology to better the experience for all your customers using Omniverse and OpenUSD. So I can't thank you enough, and really glad to hear about some of the fantastic partners you're working with, who we all recognize. So very inspiring. Thank you once again for coming today.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody for joining. Hopefully, shared some interesting information.
Yeah. Anyone has any questions or comments after the live stream? It doesn't end here. You can catch up with me or the other devs on our Discord, discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse. You can head right over to the live stream channel. If you missed any of the links, we'll post them in the description shortly. Otherwise, this live stream is available to anyone to watch after today. So this was a special day for us. We usually broadcast on Wednesday. Didn't stop the number of viewers. So hundreds of people watching right now. So thank you all for tuning in and the great questions and comments throughout. But we really enjoyed this hour. So thank you, Mitch and Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's watch that video again.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.